Hello, and welcome to the War of Ideas podcast. This is Cody Symbol, and today we'll be talking about the DACA program that is in the news recently because of Donald Trump wanting to end it. The DACA program stands for Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals. It is something that Obama created, and I will also be talking about the ongoing battle between the Berniecrat left and the regular left that most people grew up with. Your run-of-the-mill Hillary Clinton types. A lot of people are sticking by Bernie, and he is continuing to fight for what he thinks is right, even though he's not in a race anymore. He is still a senator of Vermont, and he's still getting the word out there about the things that he talked about in the election, like Medicare for all. That's the big one I'll talk about. And with Hillary's new book coming out recently, I figured I'd finally tackle this subject. The inter-party fighting has been going on for quite a while now, but with Hillary's new book and the addition of a lot more co-sponsors to the Medicare for All bill, showing that it's gaining momentum, I feel like this inner struggle of the Democratic Party is only going to get more pronounced and become a bigger topic over time. And before I get into the topics today, I wanted to share my thoughts on being current. And by that I mean, I've been thinking about how most of us, if not literally almost all of us, need to consume new information and will not listen to or read or watch anything that isn't currently in the news. Out with the old and in with the new, no matter how much people liked or disliked something, or no matter how much it captivated them, it's not going to be interesting to people once it's not in the daily trend of news. If you don't talk about Hillary Clinton's new book that she published not too long ago, you may as well not talk about it at all, because if you're going to share information about it 3 weeks from now, most likely people are not going to care because they've already heard all they cared to about that, and it's old news, and bring on the next thing Trump did that day. Or keep telling me more about the iPhone X. Speaking of the iPhone, companies like Apple and Facebook and Google that are dependent upon getting people's attention know a whole lot about this topic and do a lot of research to make sure that they can keep our attention for as long as possible. And I don't know much about this, so I will refer you, if you are interested, to Google Tristan Harris. He is a former Google employee. He tries to explain to people like us how tech companies manipulate you into keeping your attention. Taking from his website here, he wants to transform our technology environment to align with our best interests. Because as of right now, looking at your phone 100 times a day or checking Facebook 50 times a day, if people were to be asked in a poll if them doing that every day aligns with their best interests, I would think a vast majority would say no, but they do it anyway. He wants to convince these technology companies and these design companies to ethically steer the thoughts and actions that appear in everybody's minds. If you want to learn more, you can go to his website, tristanharris.com. You can check his Twitter. You can look up his TED Talk, look up his interviews. And now I will get on to the topics that I wanted to talk about today. Let's start with DACA. Alright, so after hearing that Donald Trump wanted to cancel the DACA program that Obama made, Obama decided to speak up. and he made a large post on social media arguing his case and what led him to create the program. And his main idea to defend the program is that the little children, the dreamers that he's trying to protect, did nothing wrong. And he's right, obviously. They didn't have a choice when their parents brought them to America illegally. But I don't think that's the way to convince people. At least, the best way to convince people. Because it's easily countered by Trump and people who like Trump. And there's a better way to explain why it should stay. Anyone on Trump's side can just say, yeah, they didn't do anything wrong, but their parents did. They're still here illegally, and illegal is illegal. The word illegal speaks for itself. End of story. It's a simple takedown, and you can't argue with those terms. Like, you're trying to play the moral card on somebody like Donald Trump. It's not gonna work. So don't take that approach. We have to literally change the way people enter the United States. We have to make it easier to become a legal citizen. We have to inform illegals of ways that they can lift that word from their moniker. People fleeing here for a better life shouldn't have to wait years to do it the right way. The right way needs to change to accommodate the high influx of people. Getting here illegally should not be easier than getting here legally. That's what we really have to change. I'm sure if any of these people that are coming here for a better life and are willing to work for it, if they were told how to do it the right way, they would do it the right way. They're not coming here illegally because they want to evade the system and they're secretly undercover and trying to destroy democracy in America. If you think that, you might be xenophobic. It's a great catch-22 by Obama, saying you can't possibly blame the children because they didn't do anything, and you can't. But it is true that some of their parents came here illegally, and instead of trying to find a way to sneak in immigrants illegally without having them get deported, how about you attack the root of the problem and make an easier way for immigrants to get here legally? Now, I'm not blaming Obama for that. I know he might have tried and Congress didn't pass what he was looking for. He even says so in his social media posts that he didn't want to make this DACA proposal, but he was forced to because what he really wanted was not passed by Congress. So if you change how people can come in, then Trump can't use the excuse of the word illegal as the reason that he wants them out of here. He'll have to equivocate around how he really feels by bringing out yet another excuse. But hey, it's still one step closer to freedom for the immigrants. One step closer to winning the battle. He will no longer be able to use the excuse of illegal. Make it so that the people that want nothing more than to have a better life here and work for it, make it so that it is as easy as possible for them to come here legally. That's what we should really be doing, instead of doing something that Obama did that you can't possibly blame these kids because technically they didn't do it. It's just working your way around the law. We have to change the law. Women didn't have the right to vote until the year 1920. That's less than 100 years ago. And you know how they got the right to vote? They got an amendment put in place. They changed the law. What's thought to be good in the year 1800 can change over the course of 100 years, or maybe even 5 years, or 1,000 years. You can't just keep things the way they were without thinking about it. Think about it first, and then change or don't based on what you think will be good. It's really not that difficult. If we can do this, we can think about immigration differently. You don't just sit there and say, well, currently you can't just walk in illegally. You have to think about this. You think, should we change the way people can legally enter the country? Feels like it might be a good idea since more people seem to be doing it illegally rather than legally. And I would imagine more than half the people coming here illegally are doing it because it's way too difficult to do legally, or they don't know how to do it legally. So they do it illegally instead. Maybe we should do something about that. I do want to point out a part of Obama's post that he should have made the main idea instead of, oh, but think of the poor kids who did nothing wrong. And that is where he wrote, it made no sense to expel talented, driven, patriotic young people from the only country they know solely because of the actions of their parents. But I do have to say Obama did his best here. He says in his post he tried to work together with both parties to write legislation that would have told these young people, if your parents brought you here as a child, if you've been here a certain number of years, and if you're willing to go to college or serve in our military, then you'll get the chance to stay and earn your citizenship. And he said, for years while I was president, I asked Congress to send me a bill that included that in it, and the bill never came. So he did the next best thing he could think of, and that was this. That was DACA. It's up to the current politicians, the current Democrats, to drive home that point and not the think of the children point. Find ways for people to earn their citizenship. Create a situation of purgatory where the immigrant is neither legal or illegal and they're allowed to stay there as long as they're working their way towards becoming legal. Maybe I should call it limbo instead of purgatory. That might be a good idea. Alright, next up, instead of continuing to talk about what we can do to help, let's talk about why we should help. Why does every human being deserve a chance at a better life? Let me think about that one. Well, that's probably unfair. The argument really is one side saying we don't have the resources to help these people coming in, and it's a detriment to the people that were born here, either by not being able to get jobs or being paid less because there's other people who accept less money from another country, so their wages are going down, their taxes are going up because of them. Those are the real arguments. I understand a lot of people don't want America to be the police of the world and to go stop wars somewhere else and stop the oppression of people in the Middle East, for example. But the least we can do is let people in who are trying to escape those wars and trying to escape that oppression. We take for granted the idea that we in the West have a better life than people in the Middle East. There's people who are born in the Middle East and grow up in the Middle East and have no idea that life gets any better. That outside of their world, there's other places that don't have these insane religious ideologies that completely consume and take over their lives, and that you can live however you want to live in the West. But people do find out about that. To even want to immigrate from your country in the Middle East to America shows that you know that America is better. You already have the pride that you need to become an American. You already think America is a better country than your own. And not every single person in the Middle East thinks that. Not even close. So the people who actually do want to come here as immigrants that are purposely fleeing because they know how much better it is in America than where they live, those are the people we really should be helping. Those people have actually figured it out. They know America is better than where I live. Because as a woman, they would actually let me drive. As a woman, they would actually let me go places without a male guardian. These are the people we should be helping the most. You don't have to be the world police to let these people in. It's the least we can do. It really is. It's worth letting in hundreds of thousands of people for an opportunity for a new and better life, even if there's a small chance that one of them is gonna kill somebody. Because that's just the world we live in. There's always a chance you're gonna die when you walk outside. There's a chance you're gonna die when you're inside. You can't be that scared. That's not an excuse. They're humans just like me and you. If you can afford to let people in, you should do it. I'd be perfectly willing to pay more tax dollars to support people like that. You're not going to go homeless paying too many taxes for immigrants. That's not how this works. They're not going to live like kings while you lose your jobs and you either become homeless or get booted out of the country. They're not taking your spot. Do something nice for the people less fortunate than you. I don't know the exact specifics of how much money every immigrant costs each taxpayer on average. I have no idea. I'm not going to pretend I know. But you can probably ballpark it. You can be safe to assume you'll live your life just as you normally do. And the only thing you really should be afraid of is having immigrants commit crimes. And that's not a racist thing to say because everybody commits crimes. All races commit crimes. So it's also not an excuse to not let them in either. I've seen a picture on Twitter making the rounds of some DACA immigrant killing an American, and that's people's excuse for not letting 800,000 people stay here because one person, or maybe 5, or maybe 10, out of 800,000 did something bad, and this is really bad. It was a murder. I have no idea if it's even true or not, but I'm going to assume it is. Because even if it is, that still doesn't matter. Do you know how many white Americans there are that are incarcerated? 450 out of every 100,000 white Americans are currently in jail or in prison. Those numbers are higher for Black Americans, they're higher for Hispanic Americans. So with whites being the lowest of those three, that's 450 per 100,000. There's 800,000 DACA immigrants. Just to be on par with white Americans doing something wrong, getting in trouble with the law, that would be 8 times 450 people. That would be 3,600 DACA immigrants that would be incarcerated if they had the same rate as white Americans. 3,600. Yeah, that's a lot higher than 0, isn't it? Yeah, when you let in 800,000 people, some of them are going to do bad things. When you give birth to 800,000 Americans, some of them are going to do bad things. Please tell me more why I should care about immigrants committing crimes compared to Americans committing crimes. Tell me how that is somehow a good reason to not let them in. Because there's no way you could ever let anybody into the country of any race, of any region, of any religion ever again if you are scared that there is a chance one of them will do anything from smoke weed and get thrown in jail or commit a murder and get thrown in jail. Because there's always a chance that will happen. Alright, now on to the corporate Democrats versus the populist Democrats, or the Bernie Democrats, or the Berniecrats, the people who like Bernie a lot and do not like most of the Democrats currently in office. And I know I said versus to make it seem like it's pretty intense and these two sides are opposites, but just in case anyone didn't know, I'd like to say I know these two sides agree on almost everything, at least when compared to Republicans. And when we talk about the differences between these two types of people, you can really get into the fine details of the issues and try to get things precisely correct. And with an audience that will actually listen. Republicans are less likely to want to even consider the arguments of people on the left and vice versa. But for this, I hope most people will know, hey, we're on the same side of the coin here, and I won't get into a shouting match or get angry at the other one, although that does happen. And before I go any further, I am, or was, on Bernie Sanders' side in the primary. I voted for Bernie Sanders, and I still side with his arguments today over most other Democrats. And I also want to say, if you are someone that might think, you know what, you should really not be focusing on this because while we argue with each other, the Republicans are the ones that win because you're splitting up the vote. And don't say it isn't worth it to do this, because it is. And if we iron the kinks out in this, in the Democratic Party, it will help you win the battle against the Republicans. It can also be true that because the current Democrats did not adopt the positions of Bernie Sanders, that might have played a role in the loss to Donald Trump. It obviously wasn't the only role played. We can all agree on that. But it was something. Hillary is right that Bernie hurt her in the election. He hurt her because he presented better ideas than her. More popular ideas. I know popular is not the same as better, but he made her look bad because he was thinking bigger than her, and he made her look inferior. This is not his fault. He should not be at fault for trying to be the best he can be. You can say it was his fault for not bowing out of the race earlier, and it could be. He could have cost her some votes, and I would agree that should be on him. The second he knew it was over 100%, he should have been out of there. But I wouldn't expect him to change his message. I wouldn't expect him to abandon the idea of universal health care just because Hillary doesn't want it. In Hillary's new book, she wrote, no matter how bold and progressive my policy proposals were, which I don't think they were just the same as Obama's, Bernie would come out with something even bigger, loftier, and leftier, regardless of whether it was realistic or not. His ideas are realistic, and they are realistic because they happen in other places around the world. How many times did he say that every other modern nation in the entire world can do it? So how is that not realistic? And I'll go a step further. What if there were no other nations that did it? Does that make it unrealistic? Does that mean we shouldn't try it? If a majority of the people want it, we should do it. What side would today's Democrats be on if they were faced with women's suffrage? Would Hillary use the same logic about women being able to vote as her logic about healthcare? Oh, well, the world didn't end these past couple hundred years that we've had where women haven't been able to vote, so we should just stick with what we have. because everything's fine, right? No reason to rock the boat. Oh, universal healthcare? No, don't worry about that. What's in place right now is fine. Obamacare, it's fine. We shouldn't really be thinking about universal healthcare right now. I don't really think it's possible. The world isn't gonna end if we don't have it, so why bother? What about when Bernie was proposing free college tuition to all public universities? Since he said that, New York has already put it into place. You don't even need to look at other nations anymore to know that it's realistic. That's right. City and state public universities in the state of New York are now tuition free. And not only is universal healthcare realistic, but it's caught on since the election, since Bernie lost the primary. There are 15 senators who have co-sponsored Bernie's Medicare for All bill. The last time he introduced it to the Senate, he didn't have a single person co-sponsor it. And now 15 people have joined him so far. It's going to be hard to pass, sure, but in the end, it's a better idea than continuing Obamacare. It's just better. And if it's possible, we should do it. If it's realistic, we should do it. Don't just give up and stay with what we have because you don't want to fight for what's better. Bernie did show a lot of Hillary's flaws. People started thinking like that. Like, hey, why is she just like, it's not really worth doing. We shouldn't undo everything Obamacare has done for us. Just keep Obamacare and make it better. People want actual policies. Bernie talked about actual policy in the debate, not just, we're going to break down the barriers and everyone's going to be happier when I'm president. No, he actually said why everyone's going to be happier when he's president. And for the same reason why Trump still has at least some of his supporters, where they feel like it's him against the world and the media hates him and that's why they like him, that is a reason why some people chose Bernie over Hillary. And that's a bad reason, I'll admit. But you can't blame them for falling into that reasoning. When every media outlet is giving Bernie no screen time or putting down his ideas and talking only about how great Hillary is, it shows. And the whole DNC rigging the primary comes out. And yeah, I know they're a private institution, the DNC. They can rig it if they want to. Good for them. But then they shouldn't be surprised if people don't vote for Hillary when they just shove it in her face. Like, yeah, we rigged it. What are you going to do about it? There's popular people in the Bernie corner that have large audiences that are saying, look, it doesn't matter if Russia interfered in our election or not. Well, let me rephrase that. It matters, but it shouldn't matter to the media right now. It shouldn't matter to the people. Let the FBI or whoever the government agency is that should deal with it, and the media and the people should be focusing on things that actually affect the American people, like healthcare for all, better infrastructure. Instead, all the corporate Democrats came on TV, they went on MSNBC and CNN, and they said, but Russia. It's like, yeah, I know it's true, but there's nothing you can do about it right now. There's nothing the media can do about it right now. It doesn't do you any favors. It doesn't put you in a better light for people like me who are already on your side compared to people like Donald Trump. How about you show us that you really care about us and not the people who donate to your campaigns? Talk about real policy like Bernie. Bernie didn't want to talk about Russia. Bernie didn't want to talk about Hillary's emails. He wanted to talk about the struggling American people, the people that need government to do things for them with their tax dollars. That's the point of government. They are our employees. We are their employers. We give them their paycheck in exchange for services. So don't complain about Russia on our dime. We're paying you money to enact policy that is going to benefit us, not to complain. And the media is a different entity altogether. We do not pay the media's paychecks. We do not pay the anchors' paychecks. But they don't do a good job of pushing politicians into talking about policy. When they have all these people on their shows to interview them, they don't really talk about policy. And it's understandable why. Might be boring. People might turn off the TV. And these media companies are private companies who, in the end, just want to make money. As many eyeballs as they have watching their show, the better. So it's hard to blame them. And it's tough to decide how we should deal with that. Should we try and do something like Britain does with the BBC? That's a government-run media network. But if the government has somebody like Donald Trump running it, maybe that's not a great idea, since he seems to be very fond of fake news. And let's say Obama was president. Would it still be a bad idea? Just because you agree with Obama doesn't mean having something like the BBC would suddenly become a good idea. And on the other side of the coin, we have what we currently have, where the media companies are owned by literally, when you get to the top, just one person, and that one person seems to have a lot of say in how skewed the media coverage is. And for media companies that are as powerful as they are in America, it just seems scary to give one person that type of power, the power to command the attention of tens of millions of people's eyeballs every day. So if I'm left choosing between government-run media like the BBC and privately run companies like we currently have, I'd still choose government-run. Seems to be working with the BBC. I mean, it'll be ages before it could ever even possibly happen, and that's if people actually want it. A majority of Americans want universal health care, but that's going to be like pulling teeth because there's rich people who don't want to lose their insurance companies that they own. Same with the rich people that own the media companies. But instead of thinking if it's ever going to happen, I'm more focused on should it happen? Should we have media who stick to absolutely nothing but facts and don't offer their opinions? It's not really feasible. There's some media companies that are very good at that as well, and it's still not without its opinions seeping through. And a lot of Americans like those opinions. A lot of popular media companies are popular because they offer opinions that people agree with. You develop a sort of personal relationship with the news anchor or the journalist, or multiple journalists from the same company like MSNBC or Fox, and you look forward to hearing their opinions, not just them spouting facts. That's not really interesting. So if we crave other people's opinions instead of just the facts, there's always going to be a market to satisfy those cravings. But at the same time, it's also dangerous. It's dangerous for such a small amount of people to have power over that many eyeballs. in that many years, whether you agree with that person or not. In a normal world where you can be confident that our government isn't corrupt and going to make a mess of things, I could see America creating its own form of the BBC in the future. And instead of being controlled by one person, it's controlled by the government. And people pay for it with their tax dollars. In a perfect world, it'd be a group effort. Hopefully, people that we can trust to be bipartisan. And if we find that we can't trust them, we can always vote them out of office, as we are their employers. And it's not like the private media companies will go away. We can have them too. And in fact, they'd probably keep each other in check. As of now, the best thing I can think of is the more media outlets there are, whether it be private or public, the better. The more there are competing with each other, the less likely they all are to come together and agree on the same lies, the same propaganda, if they were ever thinking about doing that. But I would not agree with privatizing everything, even if there was plenty of competition. Can you imagine the police and firefighters of our state being owned by private companies? Imagine if we all had to choose, like we choose between State Farm or Geico or Progressive for insurance. Imagine if we had to choose between different companies that all have their own police and or fire department. And you'd see ads on the TV and they would say, "Our policemen are the most well-trained and will keep you more safe than any of the competitors. For only $1.99 a month, you can get all this. The response time, less than 5 minutes guaranteed or your money back." I'm sure some of the companies would do a great job, perhaps better than the current police and fire department do in whatever state you live in. But it just doesn't seem right, does it? I don't think even Republicans would agree to anything like that. I think at the heart of this issue, the reason it needs to stay public and not become privatized is so that everyone has equal access to them. You don't need to pay a monthly fee to know you'll be able to count on the police when you call 911. See, the benefit of paying something with taxes is it's automatic. It's taken based on your paycheck, and you get the services. No questions asked. If you're an American citizen and you have a job and you pay taxes, you are paying for these services. Anybody is susceptible to falling victim of a crime, whether it's murder or theft. If we privatized it and made these things optional, I'm sure there would be plenty of people who would choose not to pay, and then if they ever needed help from the police or the fire department, they'd be out of luck. Most people would feel that it's mandatory, which makes sense. But then the people that own these police and firefighter companies are making a profit on something that people have no choice of whether or not they can buy it. There's the illusion of choice, but things this important, things about life and death, really shouldn't be left up to private institutions. We need to be able to have some accountability for these things. We need to know that if these people don't do a good job, that they'll get fired, that we can get rid of them ourselves. If you have a private police force, you have no say in whether anything happens to the police that don't come to your house when you call 911. The owner of that company can choose to fire that police officer, or they can choose to promote them for not coming to your aid when you call 911. Public outcry and public lashback can do nothing to change what private institutions do. They could have an effect, but ultimately it's up to the person who owns the company, which leads into healthcare. Same idea. Why is healthcare privatized when the police and firefighters are not? I always like hearing people bring up Rand Paul's argument on this. Well, if we made healthcare universal and had everyone pay taxes for it, then the doctors would be slaves. Really? What about the United States military? Their duty is to protect us. We pay taxes for them to protect us. Do you consider those people slaves? Do you consider policemen and firefighters slaves? I mean, how dumb do you have to be to think about what Rand Paul said for a maximum of 10 seconds and still agree with him? What about attorneys that we get given to us? I'm sure you've all watched a crime show on TV at least once. If you cannot afford an attorney, you will be given one. Is that attorney my slave? No. He makes money. And not only does he make money, he chose to be an attorney. Policemen choose to be policemen. The military choose to join the military. Doctors choose to become doctors and help people. And they make money. How great is that? Let's talk about the line of healthcare is not a right, but it's a privilege. Or healthcare is a right and not a privilege. See, I'd rather not even go into that and make that claim of either or. Because really, what is a right? How do we get our right to the First Amendment? Our right to free speech? A right is just a privilege that everybody has equal access to. Our local law enforcement enforce our First Amendment rights. The First Amendment isn't magic. It has to be enforced. The right for women to vote is enforced by if anyone turns you down as a woman at the voting booth, you can call law enforcement and they will provide a way for you to get in that voting booth. The 13th Amendment that says slavery or involuntary servitude shall not exist in the United States is enforced. If anyone tries to do it and the government finds out about it, you will be forcibly removed from your position of slavery. Your master will be forcibly removed from his position as master. We'd have no rights if there weren't people that agreed to uphold them for us. We should be happy that there are well-paying jobs that people volunteer to do to help their fellow human beings. So now, we don't have to use slave labor because there's plenty of people who like enforcing our rights and our privileges because it makes them feel good helping other people and they make a lot of money. How great is that? But let's go back to why healthcare should be universal and paid for by our taxes instead of privatized by health insurance companies. As I said, with the privatization of the police and firefighters being pretty insane, why wouldn't the privatization of healthcare be insane? If it was universal healthcare to begin with, people would look at the privatization of health insurance the same way they currently look at the privatization of the police force and firefighters. Something this important just simply shouldn't be left up to rich people that are beholden to shareholders. I have nothing against for-profit companies. That's why you make a company to begin with. But when the interests of for-profit clash with the interests of saving people's lives, then we should probably use the other method that we already have established, that is not for profit, called paying taxes and giving everyone the privilege of healthcare. Just forget about making money for 2 seconds and think how much better everyone's life would be. There's no way for me to convince you that you should care about other people. There's a whole bunch of other stuff you can make a company for. So please, leave the life and death of human beings out of it. That's really the only argument that can be made. I can't really say universal healthcare is better than privatization. Better in the terms of the care that you would receive if you were able to get it in both systems. All I can do is try to convince you that this is morally the best option.